Welcome to the Brilliant Minds Collective. We have an awesome panel on entrepreneurship and economic development as a driver for social change. My name is Chuck Creekmer. I'm the co-founder and CEO of allhiphop.com, and I'm also one of the founding members of the Brilliant Minds Collective. And I have the utmost, I should say, honored to be here. And I also have the honor to introduce a guy that I have always looked up to, especially coming into the game. My company is 20-something years old now, and that's crazy to say out loud, but it's true. But prior to my company, there were a number of companies and people that I looked at and looked towards for not only guidance, even though I didn't know them, for guidance in entrepreneurship, business, publishing, and so on. And Keith Clinkscales is one of those people. So I'd like to quickly welcome everyone into the room. Get your questions ready, get your notepads ready, get ready, because I know this is going to be an amazing conversation. But I'm going to right now introduce Mr. Keith Clinkscales. Seasoned media veteran Keith Clinkscales is the entertainment powerhouse behind household names such as Vibe, Heart and Soul, Savoy, Honey, and ESPN. An Emmy Award nominee and two-time Peabody winner. Mr. Clinkscales has had his start in the media industry by co-founding Urban Profile, a bi-monthly publication dedicated to urban culture, handpicked by Sean Combs to lead one of the largest independent network launches in cable television history. Mr. Clinkscales took the helm of Revolt Media and TV as CEO in 2013. Mr. Clinkscales earned an MBA from Harvard Business School and was presented with the Professional Achievement Award from Harvard Business School's African American Alumni Association. He also earned his BS in accounting and finance from Florida A&M University, where he serves as on the school's foundation board, as well as the School of Boards at Howard University in the School of Communications, Miller Coors, and PepsiCo. So without further ado, and I just want to mention the impact conventions, by the way, back in the day.
Oh, no doubt, yeah.
Were extremely popping. And that's where my business partner and I used to really get it popping. We used to sticker up the conventions and everything with all hip hop stickers. So, so there's another history there that we didn't necessarily mention in the bio. But without further ado, Mr. Keith Clinkscales.
Well, Chuck, I'm glad you mentioned that you stickered it up. I always wondered where, because I got fined for those. So I'll make sure we'll get things started the correct way. I am. Thank you very much for that introduction. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming. Thank our panelists that we'll introduce as we go along on the first question, and thank all of you for taking time to come. But most of all, I want to make sure we take a moment and thank the Brilliant Minds Collective. This is it takes a lot of work to put this together, and I really appreciate not just the group of people that did it, but the thought and the consideration on what way we should introduce this whole thing. So with that said, I'd like to begin by asking, I'm going to talk to Jonathan Speed, who is the founder of 1790 Media. He's a venture partner in Waterman Ventures. He has spent years running as a CFO and COO, running two SaaS e-learning companies. Jonathan has spent decades at Fortune 1000 companies, Citibank, Ernst & Young, Manufacturers Hanover, and several Silicon Valley startups. He is somebody who is extremely experienced, not just in the finance of things, but in the business and how things put together. He is an emeritus trustee of the Brown University Corporation, and he holds a BA in political science from Brown and an MA in military history from Norwich University. So with no further ado, I'm going to go to Jonathan. So Jonathan, my first question to you, sir. In the world that we're facing right now, with all the changes that is going on economically, on the government side, and one of the first times ever in history, people are starting to pay attention to the gap between African Americans and the rest of society. Talk to me about the role of entrepreneurship in closing that gap and building a better future, especially for young people.
So first, Keith, thank you for highlighting that I'm old. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But I'm proud and happy to be part of this really important discussion. And hopefully this discussion will lead to deeds. You know, one of the things that I talk a lot about in some of the nonprofits I work with is that, you know, we can have all the conversations we want about DEI, but it's really about the actions that we're taking. And I think forums like this really lead to action. So that's just a top line point. You know, this is a tough question that you asked. You said you were going to ask me a tough question, and I'm going to fall back on an institution that most of us know, MIT. And MIT, you know, did a report back in 2011, and it showed the success of its entrepreneurial students. And up to 2011, approximately 33,000 companies were started. And those companies ended up employing somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 million people and generating about 2 trillion in assets, or 2 trillion in revenues. And 76% of them survived. And those are remarkable numbers, right? And most schools are never going to knock that out of the park. And you can't really do that now. And if you look at sort of startups today, 90% of them are going to fail within 10 years, 50% at the beginning. So I just wanted to level set, but what I'm always remarked by is the fact that, you know, HBCUs, the 100 plus HBCUs are educating somewhere in the neighborhood of 260, 280,000 students every year, have millions of alum. And I look at that as a phenomenal foundation for the entrepreneurial spirit of African Americans. And there are touchstones into all aspects of African American life. You know, the vast majority of lawyers, judges, dentists, doctors, et cetera, came from HBCUs. And it's sort of an unknown commodity, and it's especially unknown out here in the Bay Area, which I find to be distressing. And so I think we have the talent in our HBCUs. We have the talent with Black folks at PWIs. And I think organizations like Brilliant, like we have here in this conversation, I think lead me to believe that we are getting away from, and I hate saying this, a little bit of that crab in the pot mentality, where we're actually really working hard together to solve some of the intractable problems, whether it be around health disparities, climate change, et cetera. And, you know, as a last point, just look to Atlanta. You know, it's not just a wonderful city, it is becoming a hub and a capital for Black capital, for Black entrepreneurship, whether it be in music or technology. And I think more and more we are coming together in these cities and taking advantage of the educations that we have and the interest we have in solving our own problems and leveraging that up with dollars from the larger community. So hopefully that was a halfway decent answer to your question.
Excellent answer, but most importantly, you set the stage for where we're going to go next. Next, we're going to go to Adrian C. Smith. Thank you for your answer. Adrian is a visionary, founder of the Can, the Diversity Collective, a nonprofit organization that she created to provide access and, more importantly, exposure to young adults of color and underrepresented communities in the areas of advertising, marketing, creativity, economics, innovation, and technology. Right now, she is currently the Global Director of Inclusion and Diversity at WPP, the largest multinational advertising, communications, public relations, technology, and commerce holding company in the world. With that, Adrian, let me begin like this. You heard Jonathan talk openly, get us started about business and the importance of getting into it for us. I've got to push on you more. You know, you are dealing with one of the most important industries to the entire economy of the world, of the United States, but of the world. But people of color are horrifically underrepresented in your industry, horrifically, you know. So tell me about what your mission is, because he spoke about action. Talk to me about some of the action that you are bringing in your current role.
So horrifically, I'll just repeat that since you said it like 10 times. So what's really happening in the advertising industry, I don't think it's anything new. And, we're at one of those pivotal points in this industry. And we're at this pivotal point because of what happened during the last year. We were in this space of COVID quarantining, and not just with advertising, I'm sure with any industry, the advertising dollars were disappearing or taken from the budget. I'll say the budget was taken away from I&D or DE&I. Then we moved to the situation with George Floyd, where we all had an opportunity to witness him being killed live globally. And that's when the magic money showed back up again. The money was taken away during quarantine, then it was given back. So I think where we are in this industry is really like a reset moment. If we talk about the journey that we've been on in this advertising marketing industry, maybe like 30 years ago, there was the Madison Avenue, initiative that was started because, there were the Katz memo went out. I don't know if you remember that talked about, advertisers must tell their clients to attract prospects and not suspects as it related to Black media consumers. Since that got out, and Sharpton started and I think the Black enterprise people, help me, Keith, you know them. Butch Graves, the Graves family, they all participated in setting up this movement for more media companies to get money that were minority owned. Then we moved 10 years later. There was a movement called the Madison Avenue Project.
Yep.
Yes, where we saw all of the numbers and data that was pulled that showed women, people of color weren't being paid, weren't being put into positions of power as the counterparts, the white counterparts. 10 years later, we're in this phase of accountability, right? Where, now you can't just talk about it, you really have to do something about it. I said all that to say we've been in this phase before, right? The numbers haven't changed. No matter what type of data you've collected, you see not a lot of Black people or people of color in this industry, and it is really all about the action. So what has to happen from a DEI lens is once all those numbers and processes have been put in place, the action has to take place. So a lot of agencies are doing what I want to call some very bold moves by changing policies internally. Some of the issues with mid to senior level managers are that they don't get promoted. And it's just not with Black people, it's just with people in general, because the policies in our industry say that you can't get a promotion or get a raise at your one job, at your one organization. You really have to move to another organization in order to get promoted and get paid. So things are being done. So your policy to promotion and power, I forget the term we're using, to be promoted is done. And they talk about how can we find more people of color? We can't find them is the other thing. And we're challenging agencies, and I hope in every industry, to look for people with transferable skills and not just, from the traditional advertising majors or marketing people, but look at people with transferable skills who can actually do work. So the key is the setup now. What does your internal culture look like? Are you preparing the people who are there to do better jobs? Are you looking at the internal structures? Is I&D being embedded into the entire organization, or is it just set up for one particular person to handle? And I'll tell you now, if that's the way the structure is set up, it's going to fail. So if the organizations aren't putting more than one person, like you can have a figurehead of a DEI lead, but if you don't give that DEI lead money and you don't give that DEI lead staff, and your senior leadership is not buying into that movement that's being created, then it's going to fail. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, you did. And let me do this. I pick on you, Adrian, because I know how hard you work and I know what you've done. But in fairness to you, I picked on you because you're in a very tough position. But more importantly, before you even got in that position, you built something at the Cannes Festival
Yeah.
that I'd like you to talk about, because you started in advertising by taking serious action, by providing exposure, by providing knowledge to young people that didn't even know about the role of that festival in the overall thing.
Yeah.
So please talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go to Rob next.
Sure. So let me too just start by I'm an advocate and an activist, and at heart. So I'm going to take action, and my motto is don't talk about it, be about it, right? So I had the opportunity to go to Cannes for the first time in 2017, and I went as a voyeur. And for folks that don't know, Cannes Lions is the largest advertising marketing festival in the world. About 15,000 people attend this festival. 200 on a good year look like me. And so imagine that. And that includes folks from Africa, the US, and the UK, right? So globally, this festival that taunts having the best creatives in the world, and none of us are in the room, right? So the year that I went, there was a big conversation about how do we diversify this industry? And I thought it literally was a trick question. Like, what are you talking about? Number one, I think you expose and give people access and opportunity. Let us know that it's even happening. Because I hear you listening to the music, right? As I'm walking down the Creuset in the south of France, number one, it's very pretentious. You got the yacht parties, and it's not a cheap festival to go through. You're going to spend between you and your corporation at least $10,000 to attend this festival. But what I did, answering that call, was in the next year, I just brought 5 young people back to say, this is easy. I got sponsors to bring 5 young people to participate in their Young Lions Academy. And Keith and crew, when I tell you these young people showed up and showed out, they did. They changed the trajectory of the conversation that they were having in the academies. And the people were blown away. And I was like, why are you blown away? This is what we do. Because you're listening to our music. You're taking our creative leads, but you don't want us in the room when there's decisions being made or talking about the work that's being done. So that year was a success. The following year, we were able to bring 25 young people and host the first diversity, equity, and inclusion activation ever at the Cannes Lions Festival in its 66-year history. And we called it Inkwell to do a throwback to Inkwell at Martha's Vineyard. So, change is being made, but you just literally have to take action outside of the structures that are being created. So that's what had happened. That's what we did.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. But thank you for your answer. But more importantly, thank you for your courage to go ahead and do that in the first place. That was not an easy task to go ahead and put that on and make it come off as well as it did, and to bring something back like that. And that led you to where you are right now is really a wonderful thing. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, and in full transparency, I'm no longer a part of the WPP family. I don't know if we talked about that. But what WPP is doing, and I think is a brave step of what we were creating, was taking all the work out of the center and putting it into the actual brand. So being a part of a crew that was able to hire more people of diverse backgrounds and in these positions where they can actually make change on the brand level. And this is recent. So I think that's the move you have to make, and make sure that you're integrating DE&I in every facet of the business, not just siloed in one department.
Thank you for that. Rob Similcare, I met Rob very early in my time at ESPN, and Rob is an extremely bright young man, and he has always been a bright young man and a leader. He's been a television executive with me at ESPN. He's been a journalist on air and off air. He's been a producer. He has been a senior executive making decisions. I knew him at ESPN. He was at ABC News and NBC Sports. He also went on to run NBC Sports Ventures. So he did a number of different international business development deals, and he did deals with the Golf Channel and NBC Sports and NBC Sports Radio. He's done a number of things. He's worked on the digital platform. He has a long resume. He's worked at a number of golf at law firms, Weil, Gosshall and Manges, and Crevasse, Swain and Moore. He's a graduate of Dartmouth and of Harvard Law School, and an outstanding fellow. So with that, Rob, I'm going to talk to you one of the things that you did that you launched a digital video interview platform called Persona. And with the kind of background that you have and the kind of experience that you've had at the corporate level, talk to me about what ticked in your heart to make you step forward and launch your own entrepreneurial venture.
Well, Keith, thank you. It's great to be with you. It's always great to see you. And there's nothing I hate more than listening to my bio. It's just something about that. It's just when you hear about all that stuff you've done, you just add up the years. There's just no way to stop adding up the years. But I appreciate the intro. I think, Keith, I know you have been through this, listening to Adrian's experience. I know we've all been through this, right? You work within a sort of large corporate ecosystem for a period of time in your career. You're excited to be there, right? It's not easy to get to those places, to be, VP, SVP level, and a Fortune 100 company, right? And you look around the room and you realize, okay, I'm here, and there's not really anybody else who looks like me here, right? So that you've done something by getting there, right? But even having done that, I think there's always a desire to free yourself a little bit, right, from a few things that you experience as a person of color in those environments, right? First of all, it gets sometimes it gets a little old being the only one, right? Looking around and being the only one. You do also, I think, you do feel at sometimes that when you got to that level, that there's a perception that, hey, you've done great, congrats, like you should sort of be thrilled to be where you are, right? And if you've got ambitions to make things happen, and especially to make them happen at a faster pace, then the corporate world will really let anybody move, right? I'm not just talking about people of color. I'm talking about in general, the way things evolve, the way, the lack of quick adaptation that you have in these companies. You sort of, for me at least, I had that itch, right? And I had been in a unique situation at NBC Sports where I was kind of an in-house entrepreneur. I launched businesses, I invested in businesses, I did some venture capital investing as well with Comcast Ventures. So I got a little taste of the VC world. And so I got to know the startup culture. I got to meet a lot of founders, and I just saw how fast you could make things happen in that world. I also knew the other downside of it, right? Which is you're walking the tightrope without a net. There's no giant, huge company behind you that's always going to have a budget, and there's always going to be, a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? So I knew what I was getting into on both the plus and the minus side. And, all those things are real. It's great to be able to make decisions to, adjust your business model, to pivot quickly, to, make new product features, to do all those things without having to go through, a month-long set of strategy sessions and get approval from multiple layers, right? It's great to be able to do that. But on the other side, you got to make it happen. You got to do everything from, have the idea, execute the idea. And then the hardest part for anybody who I think is thinking about being an entrepreneur, if it's kind of business that requires it, and not all businesses do, but most of the businesses you think of being like exciting startups, they need capital, right? It comes down to capital at the end of the day. That's definitely the biggest obstacle, right? That most founders of color who want to create something big face, is getting that first check, getting that first person to back you, whether it's in the world of startups, there's the first round of financing is almost universally known as the friends and family round, right? You go out and you tap your network of friends and your family, and that's where you raise your first round of financing, right? And for people in Silicon Valley who come from that world, a different world than most founders of color, you could easily raise $500,000 from friends and family, right? That can happen pretty easily, but that's not as easy for a lot of people from communities of color, right? I mean, if you can raise $100,000, that's a tremendous accomplishment. So you've got to look to other funding resources, and hopefully, and I know there's a lot of talk about opening that up, Keith. I know you know that's happening. I don't know how real that is yet, but it needs to get real, because that's by far the biggest barrier to people, making that jump. I was already pretty senior in my career, so I could do it. I had that network, but when you're young, as most, founders are, it's a lot harder.
Well, let's do this. You hit on one of the tougher things that all entrepreneurs have to deal with, especially those of color, and that is, getting financing, getting funding, and getting access. The key to getting access is exposure and awareness, and having someone that's a sponsor and someone that can get behind you. The next young lady, Cassandra Butcher, for years has been working extremely hard to make sure she does just that. She not only works with people in a marketing and a public relations capacity, but she stands with them during the good times, but more importantly, during the bad times, to help them through the difficult ways to get things done. She oversees all marketing campaigns and works with the distribution and sales partners. She is the chief marketing officer and co-creative director of Bronze Studios. We would run out of time if I had to talk about all of the movies that she has worked on. Most recently, she worked on the critically acclaimed film American Skin, which has been receiving significant rave reviews from the power of it, the relevancy of it, and the timing to what's going on today. So I am pleased to have her. She's got a long background, and but the main thing I want to make sure I let all of us know here is that she is about exposure and really making sure people understand the marketing power of the audiences and the marketing power of the talent that we're working with. So Cassandra, it's wonderful to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, and I would like to welcome you. So talk to me, Cassandra, the move that has happened in the movie business after the pandemic, and the number of major studios went direct to streaming, canceled theaters, caused different challenges with that. Talk to me about your view on that regarding Black filmmakers, Black actors, and their opportunities to do what some of the things that you did with American Skin.
Yeah. Thank you, number one, for inviting me. I'm definitely honored. And anytime we're talking about younger people and entrepreneurship, I'm extremely interested. I watching, just so you guys have some background, Singleton and Tupac Shakur are always in my heart and soul. And it's when I worked with Keith the most. And Keith, the last time we talked was during the transition of Singleton. So I appreciate you for calling me at that time. What we've seen, optimism is something that's super, super important for me. And I think for us as a people, when it rains, it pours, and when there's pennies from heaven, it's very rare that I would say Black and brown people actually reap the benefits to a certain degree. So therefore, it's given us the perseverance to kind of go about our business regardless. It's like, how many times, Keith and just everyone here, have you heard that, I worked in theater with August Wilson on something called King Hedley, and to listen to the conversation and to know that August and Ben Mordecai had to hear statements that they had to hear, as if, we don't read. I've sat in meetings where I've been told we don't read. I've sat in meetings where I've had to correct them and say that's absolutely false, and picked out, like, literally, they've paid for the data for me to pull the data, because that's the only thing that actually matters. And that was obviously many, many years ago. But what I bring that up to say that, I do believe when America gets the, flu, we have pneumonia. I do believe that, but it will not define us. The winners, it will not define. And so I think with something like American Skin, it was a matter of, the movie was shot in 2019. It was, no one believed that anything like what was shown in the movie, I won't get into the details of the movie, but could have ever happened. And then on January 6th, we saw that it happened to the nth degree. And ultimately, I just believe that, we're, not to sound like, I don't know, I'm very spiritual. And for me, it's about being smart, being intentional, and not allowing people to feel comfortable to say anything. I came into this business where I went to Toronto Film Festival, and I've been to Cannes and Berlin on several occasions. And I had a white woman tell me within the last 6 years that she could say anything around me. I was working on 12 Years a Slave, because I was probably whiter than anybody she knew in her family. So when people are that comfortable saying things like that, there needs to be a correction. There needs to be a reckoning. And for me, I know that I was not put in place to work with people like John Singleton, people like Tupac Shakur, people like Queen Latifah, and I could go on, people like Steve McQueen, Jamie Foxx on Ray. Every single one of those people who have ever received an Academy Award had intention. It was not a coincidence. And we do read, and I am not whiter than anybody in your family, and we have to correct that. But on the other hand, it really shows the stupidity, I'm still getting calls from that now, where it's like there's embarrassment. There's embarrassment. What we saw just this weekend with Megan. How many of you on this call have heard she speaks or he speaks so eloquently? You dress up so well. Systemic racism is the truth. It is something that I will not, I have friends that I've lost by my postings on Instagram. It's our responsibility. We have to leave the world a better place than when we entered it. I don't have my own children, but I do. All the children are my children. And for me, I just come to everything and I think that's what with American Skin, coming to things as authentically, as genuinely, as humanly possible, and speaking to people that you can't be everything to everybody, but you can be something to some people. And that's where where we literally went through list and went through social media and went to Clubhouse, and we found like-minded people. That movie was sold for, sold for under $1 million. Vertical had made, the most they had ever made on the movie was probably $2 to $3 million on Capone, which was a Braun movie. At the time before the pandemic, we couldn't get that movie sold. But during the pandemic, people were looking for opportunity. So you take advantage of that opportunity. You use your IP and you take advantage of your opportunity. We have to learn, and we have to curate things differently because we are different, right? And you don't have to tell people your half-baked ideas. So there would be conversations between myself and Nate where it was, hey, should we introduce the trailer during Black Friday? No, well, Black Friday, most people are not going to be thinking about a movie. And they're not going to want to face that there's going to be, the guilt that you're out with your mask on and you're out shopping and you've lost your job and all of these different things and your family's not there. You know what? Let's not hit them in the head too hard. Let's open it December 5th and then let's back into it. Let's not show the movie ever until January. Let's make everything tangible when it's tangible, because we're opening January 15th. I can't give you materials in December early when it's not tangible and there's all these other things happening for you to forget it. Yeah. So basically between January 7th and January 15th, we hit you in the head with everything. We didn't have TV ads. We didn't have TV ads. And I will say that movie, I'll just be candid, made for 600,000, sold for under $1 million. That movie is at $7 million right now.
Cassandra, not only is that a good story, it's a story. You tend to underplay your hand when it comes to your own personal perseverance. You stay in there. You are down for the fight. You know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can tell you.
You've
I-
seen it.
Yes,
You've
I
seen
know.
it.
I have seen it. I didn't meet you under all love and happiness. We definitely had some discussions. So it's very, very nice to see
I mean,
you.
from advertising dollars, making people spend, how many times have we heard, like, we're not spending money for the advertising dollars. And I'm literally the girl walking across the lot at Fox
Yes.
with a big old poster going, what are you talking about? We have to go to the Vibe Awards. We have to do that. We have to do that. And, once I learned from an Englishman by the name of Peter Rice, you didn't tell me the house was on fire.
Yeah.
Guess what? Okay. You know what? With the things that when the house was on fire, believe me, he knew.
So when you
And we were going to win. And the last thing I'll say,
oh, sorry.
but the last thing I'll say about that, any of this is I made sure while I was at Fox Searchlight for 12 years, and even my job at Braun, if you submit the Joker to the Academy Awards, guess what? You're submitting it to the African American Film Critics. You're submitting it to the NAACP. You're submitting it to the family out in San Francisco, the film festival in San Francisco. And we're going to show that movie at ABFF too.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a strategy, and then, there's a lot of things where it's like, you can't show a movie. If you're going to show it, it can. We can have clips and conversations.
Yep.
We can Skype people in.
Yep. Yes, you can.
Before we were doing Zoom. So bottom line is we've never had it easy. We've always had to come up with other ways. And now my job is to make sure that we come up with other ways and make people accountable without being too offensive. But the last thing I'll say too is whenever someone says, "Ooh, that was hot, that was fire," and I'm like, you know who I learned it from? You. Because there ain't nobody that looks like me in this marketing department. So my words cut like that because I learned it from you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just giving you back what you give me.
There you go.
And
Well,
that's it.
Cassandra, thank you for doing that. Thank you for walking across the lot. Thank you tremendously for making people accountable and making sure, by you making sure these films get shown to all these different people, you make sure that these Black journalists get a chance to go ahead and develop the credibility. So you've done a wonderful thing. It was so funny listening to you talk about you speak well,
Speak well, you dress up nicely.
If I told all of you, every time you go to the airport, you see TVs up in the airport, and and you look at all these, across all these airports, across some train stations, in many hotels, you have, TVs playing things, over 100 million of these TVs. Now, if I told you that, a Black person runs all those things, you would be like, that doesn't seem like a Black person.
Well, yeah.
Well, here today, we have right here with us, Mr. Linwood Bibbins. He is a serial entrepreneur. He is a CEO and founder of Reach TV. He has taken a leadership role in identifying new markets for sales, distribution, and partnership with world-class traditional and digital media. He is making moves all the time. We had meetings today. He was in the middle of it. He said, "I'm sorry, Keith, that's canceled. I'll see you on the call and we'll get together." But I am so proud of what he's been able to do, because in reality, he has really seized this whole industry at a time of the most significant change that air travel has gone through in history. Even 9/11 did not have the kind of impact of what we're facing right now. And he has come out positioned well and leading with that. So with that, Linwood, I'd like to ask you, talk to me about the role of people of color in media, technology, distribution, and understanding our role in the digital game.
I'm going to answer that question kind of harsh. Most people don't think we have a role, and that was my problem. And I'm going to go, I think it was Rob earlier talking about raising capital and certain things. You know, I'm going to make a statement that, simply put, I was one of the more successful guys. I'm a little older now, but I had built companies since 90. I sold those companies in the computer and consumer electronics space. I did 7 different exits. And when I said and then I was doing film and television finance and structuring. And when I I was investing in digital signage companies. And when I decided to launch Reach, I went to the traditional people and I heard this comment to me, which was, won't you come back once you've proven the model? And I laughed because the counterparts of people that were doing the exact same type of thing I was doing was raising, and there's not offense to that person because he's a friend of mine, raised $68 million. Now, he raised $68 million to create an inventory capacity of a $200 million annual inventory for a company with distribution across the normal cable distribution. And me, who sold companies $2 billion in revenue, was getting told to come back to prove the model. It's when I decided, and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I don't want anybody else in my company right now. I'm going to take this, I'm going to invest in myself, I'm going to build it out. I'm going to build it in a way that they don't think about. And I'm going to show that you don't have to be a coder to run a tech company. And you do need to understand the dynamics of media, because I felt that media is the #1 place to change the perception of us. It is the #1 place to tell our story. And it's the #1 place where we didn't own a seat. And I was really pissed off about it, to be honest with you. And I said, how do I backwards in to owning a seat in the most valuable market there is? And when I looked at all the markets and I looked at the transition from television to OTT and all this other stuff, I couldn't win that battle, right? I said, I can't be a bigger digital company than this person. I can't be a bigger television company than this person. But what I could own is a travel media space because it was fragmented. And I said, if I can make a simple way to distribute from one cloud-based system, a television network, into a place, and if I could capture an $8.9 trillion market, which is travel and tourism, 10% of all jobs, 10% of global GDP, and the most sought after audience, if I could build a network that I could dominate that audience, they got no choice but to let me sit at the table. As a matter of fact, I'm just pulling up a chair, grabbing a sandwich, and I'm going to sit down and eat. And so this journey has went to many people telling me, hell no, you can't do that. You have to ask permission from this. You can't do that. And I guess my message is, it happens no matter what, because they don't want us sitting at a table. And I am not saying that because I'm militant. It's just, I watched the way that people operate. Conversely, where we are today, we started that 5 years ago, almost to the day. And now we're in 90 commercial airports in the US, 58 private, 1 million hotel rooms, going in flight. We have contracts for global. But I think everybody on here who understands media, we carved out our own rights window, which is one of the most important things. We carved our own rights window that allows us to have this seat at the table. So when AMC is launching a new show, they call me. I don't get the first window. I get the only window that is mine. And I'm doing the tune in to drive viewership to their launch of their series. I have partnerships with NBC and I have partnerships with others. I say that just to say that there's nothing holding us back. And if you want to build a new company as an entrepreneur, I think there's 2 rules. Simplify the processes that are out there, or have the very best product that's out there. You have 2 choices on which you build. And that's what I look for when I'm investing. And that's what I look for when I'm building. How do I simplify, or how do I make the best thing out there? I do want to address, I'm an ad supported network, right? And so I want to say, last year I was featured in Wall Street Journal. They talked about Black executives and some of the things we never say. And I think there's a PTSD from anybody on here I can ask the white counterparts that I work with for the last 25 years, 28 years, 30 years, how many of you had a gun put to your head? And they think I'm just what are you talking about? They've known me for 22 years and never knew I went through that until last year in the Wall Street Journal. And when that came out, all the heads of agencies, chairman and CEO of this agency and that agency, spent a lot of time calling me, and I didn't let them off the hook. I asked pointed questions. The difference between $30 million in advertising to me makes a difference in my company, where it's a line item for an NBC or somebody. It's not even, it's a decimal point. And I said, what are you doing to actually bring the Black media-led companies to the forefront so we can have a seat at the table for real for advertising dollars? And I am I'm optimistically excited about next week. IPG launched their first equity upfront, bringing Black media companies, Black media that focuses on African-American audiences, and we're doing upfronts. You know, that's a dramatic difference for a company that's ad supported. That's a dramatic difference for Black media companies. That's a life-changing, altering thing that could be for a network. You know, I'll give you an example of a network that went through that. Screen Vision, and I think this is all public anyway, so it won't matter. I'll just say the numbers this way. They had one number, and when 9 years ago, when they got pushed to the upfronts, that number went up 5 times. 5 times your revenue is a game changer for any new business, any entrepreneur. That is tremendous. And I think I'm gonna agree with Adrian. It's time to hold people to action. It's time to say, you're putting up 100 million. What did you spend that? Show me where you spent it, because I'm in the world. I can see it. Where did it go? And I will say that this year, and now it's more than that. Cassandra was talking about Bron and Charles King from Macro, and I know so many different people. I've seen a demonstrative difference between how we interact with each other. And this is something we don't normally talk about, but I'm gonna talk about it here. 10 years ago, we weren't as collaborative as we should have been. 5 years ago, we were getting better. The last 5 years, I've seen more collaboration between people that look like it's us and working together than I've seen in 30 years in business. And that is what's actually driving us, because we're looking at each other and finding ways to partner. And there's no way, if you put us together, because we drive the culture, if you put us all together, there's no way you can't come onto that. And I think that is where we need to go further, is to keep looking at ways to collaborate, keep looking at ways to be innovative, and keep holding people accountable for what they say they're going to do.
Thank you, Linwood. Vida Jamel Ridgway is a sales and marketing professional with over 30 years experience working in entertainment and media. She is the co-founder of University Music Entertainment, the home of the award-winning multi-platinum artists Drew Hill, Maya, and Cisco. I believe that is the thong song. We talk about that a little bit. As well as she was a partner in the Art of War music publishing. She has also run Manifest Media, which has done marketing of events. She has developed and curated and executed events for Pepsi, McDonald's, Ford, AstraZeneca, Sony, Reebok, on down the line, Radio One and BET, Afro-American newspapers. She is quite experienced when it comes to bringing music, entertainment, and events to life. So what I'd like to do, I got to know Vida a little better because she also brought to me some discussions on NFTs, which we're going to kind of wrap this up with. NFTs, I'll let her talk to you about them, and also our next guest will talk about, our next panelist will talk about them as well. But she has had just a broad career. Vida, what I'd like to ask you is, like someone who has the kind of length of career that you've had, the ability to work with the types of artists that you've had, working in entertainment you do, what area do you see the most, as things have moved now to streaming, as music has changed so drastically? Talk to me about how do people get in, and where are the entrepreneurial niches for our people to become the next Vida?
Interesting question. So yes, we had a conversation about NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens. And with this whole crypto phenomenon and everything moving to decentralization and the blockchain, which is basically smart contracts, it provides the ability for people to become their own, distribution network or company, because you can go direct to consumers with this smart contract and have the ability to have it last in perpetuity, benefit on the resale if there are any, as well as it's also immutable, which means that it can't be changed once it is minted. And in the music business, we talk about mastering a product, so you could think about minting kind of like as mastering an album or something. But anyway, so that's where all the excitement is right now in terms of entertainment and where it's going, and not only with regard to music, but also actually anything, art, visual art, movies, video, motion graphics, all sorts of things. And Black Dave, who's also on the panel, is even more of an expert and can probably, do a deeper dive into exactly what that is. But I think it's a very exciting time. And it kind of is creating a shift, a paradigm shift in the way that people are thinking about music and distribution, and whether or not we need record companies anymore, at least to provide the services that traditionally we think of them providing, and now trying to figure out where maybe we might hire them, or meaning artists may employ record companies versus the other way around. So it's very exciting. I also wanted to comment on a couple of things that the other panelists said with regard to advertising, since that is a space that I work in as well, and some solutions. Interestingly enough, I registered a couple of websites. One is called Audit 500 because of this problem and dilemma, and everybody talking a good talk about how they are going to be committed to social justice and putting money into the Black community to create more equity. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we created an organization that would audit these companies? I also registered diverse Black talent. I'm sorry, what is it? Not diverse Black talent. Diverse tech talent, and hire diverse talent, which could be a database for all of these companies who claim that they can't find, Black talent in tech and or, creative services, advertising, and all of that. Since we've been having all of these conversations and with regard to brilliant minds and how to actually move to action. Stop, it's great to sit around and intellectualize about everything, but what we're going to do, how we're going to make this tangible. And so I've been, trying to come up with ways to do that. And I do believe that I have kind of come up with a pretty comprehensive plan as to how we could facilitate some of these lofty ideas that we have, and some solutions to some of these problems, so that we can hold ourselves accountable, even because we've been talking about these age-old problems for ages. So with that said, I guess can we kick it to Dave to talk a little bit more about NFTs?
I got that. Thank you, Vita. But thank you very much. Now, Dave, Black Dave, I do not know that well, but let me tell you what I do know about Black Dave. I sat in on a session like this, and I heard this young man speak about NFTs. And I did not know what they were until I had a meeting with Vita, and Vita gave me my beginning lesson. But this young man came along and explained it in a way that even I understood it. He did a great job of breaking it down. So I would ask him, for our group, introduce yourself, Dave, and then please talk to us about NFTs and why this group that you've seen assembled should pay attention to it.
Hey, so I'm Dave. I go by Black Dave in the streets. I would say I'm a freelance creative mostly. I'm a musician. I do graphic design, web design, photo, video. I design clothing. I do all sorts of things. And so my whole thing in life has just been if there's something that I'm interested in, then I just figure out how to do it and then I do it. So this NFT space has actually been super interesting for me because now I can take everything that I've been doing for other people and I can do it for myself. So like when you're like a strictly digital artist, it's really hard to create work that you can sell to people. You're only really doing work for brands and then you're getting paid by brands. But now we're able to take our Instagram followings, we're able to take our Twitter followings, we're able to take whatever fan base we may have and turn that into something that we own and that supports us. So like with an NFT, a non-fungible token, the simplest way to put it is that it's a digital collectible. It's a digital token that has its own individual value based on what it is. So like, as you guys know, like Bitcoin exists and Ethereum exists and Dogecoin exists. And those are actually what we call fungible tokens because every single coin has the same value. So every Bitcoin is the exact same price. But with a non-fungible token, every token has a different price assigned to it because it actually references something different, like a specific art piece or a certain set of rules, or it references like a physical piece of artwork or a physical piece of clothing or a ton of different things. And so what's doubly interesting about that is that, you know, we can use the blockchain, which is essentially a ledger that keeps track of anything that happens in these networks. We can use the blockchain to verify that we are the original creators of something and verify whoever's collecting those tokens that we create as artists and as clothing brands or as, you know, entertainers or whatever. And so when I create something, the person who collects it has the ability to say, hey, I collected this from Dave, and we get to create that relationship now. And so we're actually working directly with our collectors, directly with our consumers, and we're able to create new communities around that. And so it's especially empowering in this age, I think, for artists, entrepreneurs, especially those who are young and creative and haven't found a way to really monetize that. Because, you know, I talk to guys who are streaming lots of records but aren't making lots of money, and you're able to use this NFT space to create a lot of money around one individual item. So an example of something that you could do in the NFT space is like you could put out a song and you can create an audio visual for it, and you can sell the audio visual on the blockchain for much more money than you'd ever make in streams. There's an EDM artist who recently had a drop for his album that he had released in 2017. And the album came out in 2017. And what he did was he created these limited edition vinyl versions of it. And 33 people would get the vinyl versions. The number one person would get a platinum version, which was a silver record. And then they would get VIP passes for life to this person's shows. And they would get front row seats, and they would get an NFT version of all of these songs. So the NFT versions of the songs, there were only a limited amount of them that existed, so they could collect them, and then they were able to sell those songs in the secondary market. And Vito was talking about earlier that you can actually make royalties on the secondary sales. We call them royalties, but it's kind of like a percentage on that secondary sale. So, you know, let's say that someone in these songs, well, he made $11 million. Let's start there. He made over $11 million with that drop. And what happened was it was just 33 records. The number one person had the opportunity to collaborate with him on a song. The people in positions 2 through 6, he would make a DJ mix for them, and they were able to help influence the style of the mix, influence with the songs on the mix, stuff like that. And they would get a gold version of the record. And then they would get 7 out of the 11 songs as NFTs. And then everyone from number 7 to 33 got a regular vinyl, and they got 3 songs, and that was it. And the top 2 bidders both bid over $2.5 million per person. So the number one person had bid, I think, $2.6 million, and the person under them had bid $2.5 million. And then the rest of the money came from the other bidders. So this is like the perfect opportunity for us to recreate like our success, re-monetize on what we're doing as artists, especially those who are independent, especially those who are in control of all their masters and all their rights and everything like that. There are just so many opportunities to reconnect with our fans in ways that we haven't been able to, ways that are really personal, ways that are super intentional, and ways that really test like the bounds of our creativity. So that's like the short version of NFTs. There's so much, it's such a new space, and it's so exciting, and there's so much money that's out here because so many of the guys who are buying NFTs, especially now, are people who succeeded in crypto. So it's young guys who came across all this money. And so they value money a bit differently than people who really had to, you know, hit the grindstone in order to make it. So